Samech Bet. Masechet has been dedicated by Shalom ben Yamino for the Ilun Ishmat Miriam Bat Zilpa, B'tibadel Hayim, Miriam Bat Ima Shalom. Inna lefanala v'laslachat b'nei mishpacho. We begin today's daf on Samech Aleph Amud Bet. And we start from the Matkif. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines from the bottom. Matkif la Rab Asher. Mimai dehai v'chol arel kula mashma. We learned on yesterday's daf that we had a pasuk. The pasuk said, v'chol arel lo yochal bo. So we came along and said that the Korban Pesach is only asur if they had kavanah at the time of the shechita for all arelim. However, if you had for miksat arelim and miksat mulim, it'll be okay. So that's the word v'chol arel. It's only asur until kol, until you have kavanah for all arelim. The Gemara said to learn it like that. Who told you to learn it like that? Maybe Dilma, hay v'chol arel, mashma kol dehu orla. Which means maybe when it says v'chol arel, it means any arel, which means even if you have kavanah for one, just like the pasuk says by Hametz, we just read it in the parasha. V'chol mahmetzet lo tochel. What does the v'chol over there mean? Even a drop. So v'chol doesn't have to mean everything. V'chol can even mean a little. So therefore, the chaura by the pasuk of arel, who told you that the kavanah is a v'chol? It means all arel. Maybe it means even if you have kavanah for one arel, it's going to be asur. The dilma hay bechol arel mashma kol dehu orla. So the Gemara says that's why the pasuk says ketav rahmana zot. That's why we have the pasuk that says zot. What does zot teach me? The ad deika kula orla lo pasla. That it's only going to be pasul until the kavanah was for all arelim. Just like we learned in our Mishnah. Our Mishnah said miksat arelim, miksat mulim is kasher. So we learn that from the pasuk zot. Zot teaches me it's only asur kula ona la shena b'shechita ve'la shena b'zrika. Here's the hadush. It doesn't make a difference, not at the time of the shechita and not at the time of the zrika. If you remember yesterday we had a mahloket. Some wanted to say that what at the time of the zrika doesn't affect it at all, and some wanted to say that no, we're mahmid that even miksat arlut is going to be for sale at the time of the zirika. Now we're saying no, that there's no difference between the shechita and the zirika. It's only going to be asur, complete arelim, but if you do partial, it's going to be kasher. Look at the Rashi in the bottom there. Mehai dai b'chol arel ad deika kula, or la mashma.
Ad deika kula, or la mashma, denete zot, neote zirika. Lemod b'chumna, ulemod b'kula. B'tamud lomar zot, b'ketani tanam l'ta hariti kamad.
It means on yesterday's daf, we learned that the Zot was coming to teach me specifically a hadush by Zerika. One rabbi learned a kula, that the laws of Arelim do not apply at all by Zerika, and the other rabbi said no, that even miksat Arelim by Zerika is going to impact it and make it pasul. Now we're falling off that. We're saying there's no difference between Shechika and Zerika. It's only going to be pasul, the Korban, if you do it for kulo arelim, but miksat will be mutar, according to everybody.
Dilma? Dilma zot ketani tana amil tekae. Umina yalef de eno posel bene habura habain imo umishum dechol arel kol dehu mashma. V'hachi kamar. Yachol yifsod bene habura dechol arel kol dehu mashma. V'shub lo yochal bo shum adam. Tabulomad zot. עבודה שלמה בעינן בערלות ולעולם לא שנה שחיטה ולא שנה זריקה שווים.
Beautiful. So now at this point over here, we're coming out with a reverse of what we came out in yesterday's daf. It comes out over here that if you have miksat arelim, it's going to be kasher. So go back to our question that we had on yesterday's daf on Samech Aleph Amud Bet, the top line. The top line, if you remember yesterday, was sha'atu lemulin. Al menat she'itkaperu bo arelim bizrika. Now, according to this, it should be mutar, because miksat arelim is going to be mutar. So the Ka'ura, we have to redefine this question, because at this point over here, even if there's miksat arelim by zirika, everybody's going to say it's okay. So therefore, we have to redefine the question. So the Gemara says, Ela, Amar Abashe, Rab Chazda v'Rabba, Behai kira kamepalge. The argument is in the following pasuk, V'nirtza lo lechaper alav, which we learn that in order to get kapara on the korban, it has to be v'nirtza lo, for the owner. Alav ve'lo al havero. But if you have kavanah for your friend, it's not going to be a kapara. Alav ve'lo al havero. So now, the question over here is, we're talking about over here a new case. We're talking about that the guy slaughtered the korban, and he had kavanah for an arel. Al-Khawra, we said, even if you have kavanah for arel, it's okay, until you have kavanah for all arelim. But the problem is, it's not midin arel we're hitting it over here now. We're hitting it from that every arel, L'Khawra, is not a bar kapara. He's not shayach to kapara. So therefore, he's like considered an acher. So therefore, L'Khawra, it should posel it, not midin arel, but midin, since he's not a bar kapara, arel cannot get kapara on the korban. So therefore, that's why the korban pesach should be asur, which means nothing to do with the inyan of the way we learned yesterday. The way we learned yesterday was what? We were questioning if you have miksat kavanah for arelim. That's not the issue over here. The issue over here is that the arel that you have in mind for is an acher. He's considered an outsider, and an outsider that cannot get kapara. So the Gemara says, Rabba Saba, second line, Habero dumyadide, that the fellow that you have in kavanah for is like you. Mahu debar kapara, just like you have to be ra'uf to get kapara. Af habero debar kapara. So too, the one that you're having in mind for has to be someone that's ra'uf for kapara. La poke hay arel. The arel is la bar kapara. The Hazda sabar hay arel nameh. The arel is also a bar kapara. Kevan debar chiyuvahu. Since he's a bar chiyuv, bar kaparahu. Why? He can take a brit milah. So since he can take a brit milah, he could fix his situation. So since he can fix it, Rav Hazda subscribes to the shita that says ho'il, and therefore since he can fix it, so therefore it's going to be okay. Now read the top Rashid. It's very important. Rashid redefines the whole sugya.
ומשום מחשבת שלא למנוייו כאמרי, אבל למנויין עליו, ושחטו למולין שאינם ממנויין, לזרוק דמו למנוייו הערים שבהם לבדם, להביע כולה זריקה לערים מנוייו, וכולי עלמא פסול.
Right. Everybody's going to agree that if they were part of the group and you were mechaven only for them, of course it's going to be pasul. That, like we just learned. We just learned that. And everybody will hold that if you were shochet, amenat, lezrok, lekulo arelim, it's going to be pasul. That's not the case we're talking about over here. We're discussing the following. So our case over here is talking about, over here, arelim, that were not part of the group. So Stam, he's just having kavanah for an outsider. And what's the kavanah? The kavanah over here is mishum mahshevet shelo limnuyav. And this is a mahshaba, shelo limnuyav, or shelo limnuyav maybe is lav davka, means it's a mahshaba le'acher, to somebody that's not part of the korban. Peligi. Ubehai kira.
ובהי קרא דשלא למנוייו בזריקה, והכא נפק בכל הקורבנות לכפר עליו, היינו זריקה עליו, ולא על הזורק לשם חברו.
Beautiful. So from here this pasuk we learned בנרצה לא. Only לא לכפר, but not לחברו. So רבא סבר
חברו דפסול משום שינוי בעלים דומיה דידה בעינן. מהו דבר כפרה וכולי?
Okay.
ותקן נפשה.
Okay, now let me just go back now outside. Now that we read the words, let's go back outside and see what's happening over here. At this point, the Gemara is saying that the issue over here was the guy slaughtered the Korban Pesach. And he had in mind for somebody that wasn't registered. another guy. And who was this guy? He happened to be a arel. Okay, what's the question about an arel? The law is that if you have kavanah for somebody else, so it's not going to render the korban pasul if that person is not a bar kapara, if he's not suitable to get kapara. Well, an arel, according to everybody, is not suitable for kapara. The question is, can he make himself bar kapara? So the Pasda says, yes, since he can circumcise himself, he can become a bar kapara. So if you had him in mind, it's not going to posel the korban pesach. And according to Rabbah is going to say, no, it's going to be posel. That's the Gemara. I'm just not clear whatsoever on this whole back and forth. What does this got to do? If he's not one of the minuyim, so the Chaura is pasuk because he's not one of the minuyim. What does it have to do with over here that he's bar kapara, not bar kapara? She's telling you clearly he's not one of the registrants over here. So when you have kavanah and korban pesach for somebody that's not registered, it's not a good korban. What do I care if he's a?
So regardless if he's an arel,
right?
Just in minuyin should be enough of a problem.
Right. I mean, that's why I'm lost in this whole sugya. To what the Gemara is making a subject over here. Arelim. First of all, it's not doing arelim. It's got to do with an outsider. It's got to do with an outsider. It happens to be in the arel. The question is an arel about kapara? I understand what the Gemara is trying to do over here. Is an arel shayah kapara or not? But that by the way, and if that's the case, I have another question. The way we framed yesterday's question was shahatol lemulin. You made shechita for mulin al menat sheyitkaperu bo arelim bizrika. What do you have to give a case like that for? Just ask a simple question. If your question is, are arelim bar kapara, say shahat lemulin vele arelim she'enam bene kapara. What did you have to give the case? What did you have to make the question of shahat al menat nizrok? It's not the case of shahat. It's a simple case. The simple case is, a guy had kavanah when he made the shechita for arelim, and is that considered enam b'nei b'kapara or yeh b'nei b'kapara? Again, I don't have the clarity of how the sugya is actually working. I don't know why the case has to be the case. I don't know why it's not pasuk because it's not from the minuyim. If anybody has any clarity, if the rabbi has something to say, but I will.
Rabbi, on the Samach Aleph Amud Bet, the top Rashi, it's interesting because he ends it off by saying, or minuyin or she'ena minuyin. In the initial, the way as she was learning initially, by the Arel, he said we're talking about either he's minuyin or she'ena minuyin. And now over here, where the Rashi is telling us that the whole machloket is only talking about the minuyin. I'm sorry, she'ena minuyin. So I'm trying to figure that out also. I don't know if that helps us or not. I don't know why she's switching.
Well, it clearly now it's nothing to do with because she's taking us out of minuyim over here. Because originally the question was, the issue was, let's say if they're minuyim. Now the question is, does arel posel the kavanah or not at the time of the zirika or not? Okay, that's a machloket Rava, and now we're not discussing that. Arelim will not posel at the time of the zirika. Since I didn't have them exclusively in mind, arelim is not posel at the time of zirika. And so we started today's sugya. So therefore, if arelim is not posel b'shat zirika, so what's the question? Oh, so that she says they were not minuyim. They were not minuyim. So what's the psul over here? So that she tells us the psul over here is it's acher she'en lo kapara. Okay, and so it's true. It is an acher she'en lo kapara. And then we have the machloket Rabba and Pasda. Rabba says en lo kapara that was posel, and the Pasda says no. Yes lo kapara in a ho'il. Since he can convert, and not convert, since he can mal himself, therefore he's a bar kapara. Okay, fine. I understand that machloket. I just don't know why that's got to be. Why that's got to be arel? That's issue. It's the issue of he's not manui. If he's not manui, he's not. All right. Anyway, anybody sees something on that, you could email me and let me know what you think. Anyway, the Gemara comes along and says, anything in the notes there, Rabbi? Okay, if you see anything, let me know. Okay, now the Gemara says Rav Chizda basically is subscribing to opinion of Ho'il. Umi itle Rav Chizda Ho'il. Veha itmar we learned ta'ofem yom tov lechol. Let's say a guy's baking from yom tov lechol, which you're really not allowed to bake from yom tov to lechol. Rav Chizda amar loke. Rav Chizda says you get malkut. Rabba amar enu loke. Rabba says no. Rabba amar enu loke. Why don't you get malkut? Are you baking from yom tov to lechol? Amrinan ho'il ve'i mikle'ele orchim. Since if you would invite guests, and the guest would be ra'ui to eat this food, habile hashta hazile would be ra'ui hashta nami hazile, which means Rabba is the one that says ho'il. That what? That since this food is technically suitable, how if guests would be invited and they would come, they could eat that food on Yom Tov. So therefore it's okay, even though you don't have guests now. Now, we have a double stira over here, because Rabba was the one that didn't say ho'il in the case of Arel and says it by Yom Tov, and by Rav Chizda it's the exact opposite. There's no stira and Rabba la kasha. Over here by the Brit Milah, he's lacking in action. He's got to circumcise himself. So there we're not going to say ho'il. We don't say ho'il when it's needed to do an action. But by Yom Tov, you just have to invite guests. Inviting is a dibur. And therefore, I'll say ho'il when the ho'il only entails a verbal. But I'm not going to say ho'il when it entails an action. Ela de Rav Chizda kasha. But Rav Chizda, Adraba, Rav Chizda is saying ho'il even by the case of the Brit Milah. So if Rav Chizda is saying it by the action, certainly you should say it by Yom Tov, where it's only verbal. So the Chaura, we have a stidan Rav Chizda. Amre kilet le Rav Chizda ho'il lekula the chumra itle. So now we're giving a new pshat. Rav Chizda holds ho'il only when it comes out of stringency, but he doesn't hold ho'il when it comes out a leniency. So the Gabe Korban Pesach, by saying by not saying ho'il, it'll come out a stringency. What's the stringency over here? There's not going to be a bar kapara. That was Rav Chizda. Rav Chizda said over here, I'm reading again, kilet le Rav Chizda ho'il lekula. Exactly. He doesn't take ho'il leniency. The chumra it. We have Rashi. Exactly. Read Rashi lekula.
Ela de Rav Chizda
kasha. Yeah. Hashta.
Ela de Rav Chizda kasha. Hashta hechal lo mechusar maaseh kikon zimun orchim de lav maaseh hu let lehoil. Hacha gabe arel de mechusar maaseh et lehoil. Right. He's going to take ho'il. He's going to take ho'il in the case of the arel, which is a mechusar maaseh. In that case, he holds ho'il. So the kula, I'm sorry, and in the case of the zimun orchim, which is no maaseh, he's not going to hold the ho'il. What's the Gemara answer? The kula. So basically, the rule of Rav Chizda is he always will go lechumra. That's the basic rule over here. So the Gabe Yom Tov, Rav Chizda is not going to say ho'il, and therefore by not saying ho'il, what is that going to do? It's going to give him malkut. So therefore it is a chumrah. And what did Rav Chizda say by Pesach? Rav Chizda said by Pesach, hay arel nameh kevan de bar chiyuva bar kaparahu. And therefore what's the chumrah by saying that? What's the chumrah by saying that? So since he's a bar kapara, it's going to posel the Pesach. It's going to posel the Pesach. Because when you have kavanah for somebody else, it's only pasul if the guy's a bar kapara, if he's suitable for kapara. If he's not subject to kapara, so it's not posel. So this arel, since he can become a bar kapara through a brit milah, so therefore the kavanah for him is going to be posel. Again, a kavanah for somebody outside of the korban is only pasul if the guy is subject to kapara. Let's say you have kavanah for a goy, for example. The goy is not going to be posel the korban. He's not about kapara. So the question is, what if you have kavanah for a arel? Is it arel bar kapara or not? If he is a bar kapara, then it's going to be posel the korban, because he shayach, he's considered somebody that's significant. And therefore, Rav Chizda will say ho'il to consider a bar kapara to posel the korban. So therefore, he says ho'il chumrah in both cases.
He says it to posel the Pesach and to get malkut by Yom Tov. Amar le Mor Sutra. Yes.
Rabbi, question on the Arel. How can we say Ho'il that he could get a Brit Milah if we said earlier that his brothers died during the Brit Milah and therefore he cannot get a Brit Milah? So really, practically speaking, he cannot get a Milah. So you can't say Ho'il. But why did you say that earlier? Maybe?
I think what it means is that technically he doesn't have to take a Brit Milah. The Zo'il, the only reason why he can't get a Brit Milah is because he has a technical health issue that's on him. But outside of that, technically that's blocking him, he can take a Brit Milah. That's not Hasaron in the Brit Milah. It's Hasaron, he has a health issue why he can't take the Brit Milah. But that's like Surah de Rabba Ale. It doesn't take away from the fact they can do it. It's not Mitzad Brit Milah. He's not a goy, let's say. He can take a Brit Milah. He has a health issue. That's why he can't take it. So it's already, you could say Hu'il. It's like by the guests. By the guests, we say, there's no guests. No guests are coming. You don't invite any guests. And it's Shayach. So it would be Shayach to take a Brit Milah also. I have a technical health issue over there. Health issue, not a deal in the Milah. It's a separate thing. Amar le Mor Sutra, Vered Rav Mori Rabina. Okay, now we're going back. Katani, we said above yesterday's daf. Now we're just going to review yesterday's daf a little. This is the bright that we spent a lot of time on yesterday's daf. Ho'il ve'orla poselet. Remember we said yesterday? Orla is poselet by Korban Pesach. Ve'tum'ah poselet. And tum'ah is also poselet by Korban Pesach. And we made a hekesh. Ma tum'ah lo asa b'miksat tum'ah kechol tum'ah. That by tum'ah we said partial tum'ah is not osed. Af orla, so too when you have a kavanah for orla, lo asam miksat orla kechor orla. Yuri. So we said that just like by tum'ah, miksat tum'ah does not posel, miksat orla is not going to be posel as well. Now the Gemara wants to get into some details. What type of tum'ah are we talking about? What do you mean miksat tum'ah? What happened there? Hay tum'ah hechidameh. Ilima betum'at gabre. Maybe it's talking about where tum'at gabre. The guy himself, the people in the group themselves became tameh. What does it mean? Partial tumah is not going to be a problem. The ika arba'a v'chamisha gabre temeim, v'arba'a v'chamisha gabre tehorim. Yeah, 5 guys tameh, 5 guys tahor. Yeah, coming up for both of them. I have coming up for the 5 tameh guys and the 5 tahor guys. Lo pasle lehu temeim letehorim, and therefore the kavanah for the temeim is not going to be posel. Gabe orla nameh halo pasle. Which means the Gemara is saying that what? Gabe orla nameh haylo pasle. We know by orla also it's not going to be pasle. Ditnan lamulin vela'arelim kasher. Which means, how do you know that miksat tuma is kasher, Rabotai? How do we know that miksat timi'im and miksat tuim is kasher? You know it from Al Mishnah. Al Mishnah clearly said that. So therefore, the Gemara is asking a question. That if you know that miksat timi'im and teorim is kasher from Mishnah, and now you're trying to learn that orla, miksat arelim, will also be kasher, why don't you learn from the same Mishnah that you learned tumah from? It's in the same Mishnah, by the way. The law of miksat arelim is in the same Mishnah of miksat timi'im. So from the source that you knew, if you knew the Mishnah, then you would know both dinim. So why are you looking for a source for it, by the way? Just like you know miksat timi'im is kasher. From where do you know it from? A Mishnah. So the Kavanah, you should know the same law miksat arelim. Why are you trying to generate a source? So the Gemara says, "Ma'ishina tum'ah the pshitale." Tum'ah was pshitale. You know why tum'ah was pshitale? Because you had the Mishnah. Or ma'ishina orla the mesafkele. Why do you have a zavek by orla? The Kavanah from the same source that you knew tum'ah, because you're comparing arelim to tum'ah. Ma tum'ah miksat kasher. How do you know miksat kasher? The Mishnah. So the orla is also kasher. Why was tum'ah pshitale and orla was an unknown? The Chaura orla should be just as known as Tumah. It's the same source. Ela betum'at basar. It's something that the Mishnah didn't discuss. It's not talking about Tum'at gabre. It's talking about the basar of the Korban Pesach became tameh. Umay lo asaba miksat Tumah kechol Tumah. A big hadush. The ilu itme had me'evarim. Hay de itme sarfinale. If one of the limbs of the Korban Pesach became tameh, we burn that part, but the rest of the Korban Pesach we eat. Wow, so that's a big hadush. That miksat tum'at basar by Korban Pesach will be mutat, and therefore, just like miksat Korban Pesach will be mutat, if one of the limbs becomes tameh, we'll be able to eat it. So too miksat arelim. The Gemara says, B'mai ukimta. Now how are you learning tum'ah? B'tumat basar. You're learning it b'tumat basar? Ema sefa. Wait, you're going to have a problem. Because if you learn that the case of tum'ah is tumat basar, which is hadush, that if part of the korban pesach becomes tameh, burn that limb and eat the rest. Even though obviously that limb is touching the rest of the korban, it's okay. Only miksat became tameh, get rid of it and eat the rest. The Gemara's question is,
how did this answer the question?
because that's not the case of our Mishnah. Because that's not the case of the Mishnah. That's not the case of the Mishnah. The case of the Mishnah is gabre. The case of the Mishnah is where 5 of the guys are tameh, 5 of the guys tahor. So therefore, we're not learning it from the Mishnah. You don't have a source for that. You learn it from somewhere else. So you don't know our Mishnah. Okay, so if you don't know our Mishnah,
so I got it. You have to compare it to
right. So they have to compare it to I don't know, it's an unknown. I don't know the Mishnah. Okay, no problem. So the Gemara's the only problem with that is if you're going to learn, if you're going to learn that when it says tum'ah, it's referring to tum'at basar, you're going to have a problem from the sefer. Ema sefer, what does the sefer say? Danin, dabar, she'enu noheg bechol hazebahim. We're going to learn, or we judge something that does not apply to all zebahim. Medabar she'enu noheg bechol hazebahim. Be'al yuchihu zman. Remember we wanted to learn arevim from zman? What was zman? We wanted to say that just like zman is posel b'miksato, that if a person, let's say, has kavanah for pigul on a kezayit of the korban, it's posel the whole korban. So we wanted to learn it from zman and say ma zman posel b'miksato, af arelim posel b'miksato. But the Gemara came along and said that what? That דנין דבר שנוהג בכל הזבחים, דבר שנוהג בכל הזבחים, ואל יוכיח זמן שנוהג בכל הזבחים. Which means we rather learn it from tum'ah, because tum'ah doesn't apply to all zebachim, like arelut doesn't apply to all zebachim. So we said, but don't learn it from zman, which applies to all zebachim. So the Gemara says, wait, umay tum'ah, which tum'ah does not apply to all zebachim? Inema tum'at basar, amay eno noheg b'chol zebachim. Of course, tum'at basar is noheg b'chol zebachim. So how could you come along and say that tum'ah is not noheg b'chol zebachim? It is. Ela pshita b'tum'at gabre. Oh, Ela must be talking about, it's not tumat basar. The sefer was talking about tumat gabre. And what does it mean that tumat gabre does not apply to all zebachim? Normally we say a tameh can send his korbanot by other korbanot. Even if he's tameh, he can send it through a shaliach. But an arel and a tameh cannot send their korbanot. So wait, it comes out that in the sefer of this braita, we were understanding tum'at to mean tum'at gabre. And the resha, we were understanding it to mean tum'at basar. The Gemara says, resha betum'at basar, besefer betum'at gabre? How did you learn the resha one way and the sefer a different way? Amale in. Yes, shem tum'at kaparich. Yeah, it's tum'ah. We're not discussing specifically which type of tum'ah. Hey, tum'ah, shem tum'ah. Therefore, in the Resha, it's Tumat Gabre, in the Sefer, it's Tumat, in the Resha, it's Tumat Basar, in the Sefer, it's Tumat Gabre. Shem Basar, we're asking from the Shem Tumah, not a specific Tumah. Iba etema, Sefer Nameh betumat Basar. Even the Sefer is Tumat Basar. What do you mean? If that's the case, Tumat Basar lechora applies to all korbanot. Umay eno noheg bechol hazebachim, the ilu bechol hazebachim. Here's the difference. When it comes to all zebachim, bem shenitma chelev ubasar kayam. Let's say the chelev is the part that goes on the mizbeach. Let's say the chelev became tameh, but the basar, the edible part, is still around, or the opposite. Ben shenitma basar, the chelev kayam, or whether the basar became tameh, the chelev is kayam, zorek et adam. Which means in regular korbanot, so long as there's an edible part, either for the mizbeach or for the owners, you zorek, you sprinkle. It's different. Nitma chelev ubasar kayam zorek adam. Only if the chelev is kayam will you sprinkle the blood. However, nitma basar, if the basar was nitma, the chelev kayam eno zorek adam. Because by korban pesach the main thing is the eating, and therefore if the basar became tameh by korban pesach, even though the chelev is kayam, you don't sprinkle. So therefore you see that the law of tumat basar does not apply equally to pesach to the rest of the korbanot. So therefore, the Gemara comes along and says, at this point over here, Rabotai, we now understand that the Resha and the Sefer are talking about Tum'at Basar. which means when the Resha came along and said that what we're going to learn, just like Tum'ah is posel b'miksato, is only posel, is not posel b'miksato, that if one piece of the korban pesach became tameh, burn it, and the rest of it is going to be mutar, so too miksat arelim will be mutar. And that you can't learn from our Mishnah, because our Mishnah was not talking about tumat basar, so we didn't know the Mishnah. Therefore, I learned arelim from tumat basar. The sefer came along and said that pigul applies to all korbanot. Masechet tumat basar does not. What do you mean? Tumat basar applies also to all korbanot. No, it doesn't. Because by all korbanot, even if the haleb or even if the basar becomes tameh, you can still sprinkle. But by Pesach, the basar becomes tameh, you can't sprinkle. So therefore, it's not noheg, bechol. So therefore, it works out good. You can learn the Resha, and the Sefer is talking about tum'at basar. So Gemara comes along and says, yes, the Resha and the Sefer is tum'at basar. It works out perfectly, because what does the Sefer say? I'd rather learn from, I'm not going to learn from Pigul. Why? Because Pigul applies to Kol Korbanot. I'm only going to learn from Arel and Tameh that do not apply to all Korbanot. So the Gemara asks, if Tameh is Tumat Basar applies to all Korbanot. No, it doesn't. Because Legabe other Korbanot, if one part becomes Tameh and the other part is still good, you can sprinkle. By Korban Pesach, if the Basar became Tameh and the Halib is still Kayim, you cannot sprinkle. So therefore, you see that doesn't apply equally to all korbanot. So therefore, the sefer is also good. Tumat basar is not like is not across the board by all korbanot. The Gemara only has one more question on this. The Gemara says, "B'may okimta." We're 3 lines from the bottom. Betumat basar. Okay, no problem. You want to learn that the case is talking about tumat basar. Ema sefa. What did it say in the sefer of the Braita? Danin davar shelo hutar michlalo. Which means, maybe you learn this way. Remember we said we're going to only learn things that there's no exceptions to. Arelut, there's no exception to, and Pigul, there's no exception to. So maybe I learned from Arel to Pigul, because what do they have in common, Arel and Pigul? No exceptions. But don't bring me from Tum'ah, because we know that Tum'ah has an exception. What's the exception of Tum'ah? When people became Tameh, we say what? Tumah hutra. But wait, if you're learning now that it's tumat basar, there's no exception by tumat basar. So the Gemara says, B'may ilima betumat basar hechal hutra. Where do you ever see heter by tumat basar? We only have a heter by tumat gabre. Elapshita betumat gabre. Oh, el must be tumat gabre. Hechal hutra mechlala. Where do you see the exception of tumat gabre? Besibur. Oh, now we have a problem. Resha betumat basar, sefa betumat gabre. Same question. Now you're making the resha of that braita. It's tumat basar, and the sefa now is going to be tumat gabre. Gemara says, "In yes, shem basar, shem tumat kaparich." Yeah, we're not discussing specific tumat. The shem tumat. V'bayetema kula betumat basar. All of it's tumat basar. V'heka hutra betumat pesa, which means, and where do we see heter betumat basar by Pesach? Ditnan Pesach haba betumah. What's the case of Pesach haba betumah? The majority of the people, let's say, were temeim. Nechal betumah. You can eat it. That's the hidush. What do you mean? If you're tameh, when you eat it, what's going to happen to the meat? It's going to become tameh. So you see, by Pesach they allow you to eat the basar even if it became tameh. Shelo ba'am betchilato ela la'akilah. Normally we say, well, when basar becomes tameh, sprinkle it, but you can't eat it. Sprinkle the blood, but you can't eat it. By korban pesach, the exception. That if the people are tameim, we say you can even eat the korban, which means shows you what? That tumat basar was pushed away for pesach. So therefore, to show you, you have an exception. So therefore, even tumat basar is going to be a mutar, specifically the gaber pesach. Beautiful. So therefore, we have a clarity. Read the top Rashi. Right. Exactly. Which means when the Torah allowed you to bring the korban pesach betumah, What did they allow you to do? To eat it. Because the main purpose of Korban is to eat it. I could have argued and said, maybe they just allowed you to bring it, but don't eat it. No, they cut business to eat. So therefore you see what? That in a Hanami, that Tum'ah is like Orla. That what? Just like Orla. I'm sorry, it's not like Orla. Orla is lo hutar. I'm sorry, Orla. Orla is no exceptions. Just like Tum'ah, we thought. And then we're saying, no, Tum'ah is hutar michlalo. Yes, it is hutar michlalo. Where do you see it's hutar michlalo? You see it's hutar michlalo legabe Pesach. That's what we said above. Even the basar that became tamid, we mutar to eat betum'ah. Exactly. Masechet pigul is lo hutar michlalo. Right, pigul is never a heter michlalo. Very okay. Comes the Gemara and says, Mati Rav Huna bered Rav Yoshua. Rabotai, if this daf seems complicated, it's because it is complicated. The Gemara, that's it. There's nothing to do. There's no way to make this daf any easier than it is. It's connected to yesterday's daf. Rabotai, that's the daf you got today. There's no way to change the daf. You just have to read it straight through and not lose the flow. Mativ Rav Huna bered Rav Yoshua. Okay, now maybe we got a new case. A Pesach she'avra shenato. What's this case over here? A Korban Pesach that passed its year. Let's say you have a Korban Pesach. You can only be a Korban Pesach in the first year. Once it becomes the second year, it's pasul for Korban Pesach. So you have a Korban Pesach. It was born, let's say, before Rosh Chodesh Nisan. That's the example. And then what happened? You didn't bring it that first year. You brought it the next year, the next Nisan. Once the next Nisan comes, it's already second year. And therefore it's going to be pasul. What does it become automatically? It becomes now a shelamim. Exactly. You cannot use it for Korban Pesach anymore. So the deen is over here. Ha-Pesach she'avra shenato. You want to read this case for a second? She just gives me the case. She'avra shenato.
שנולד אשתקד קודם ראש חודש ניסן, והפרישו לשם פסח. וכי מתי ראש חודש ניסן ועברה שנתו, תו לא חזר לפסח, וכתיב זה אחד בן שנה, וקיים שלמים, כדרכם ובקין דקמן, פסח בשעה ימות השנה, שלמים הוא.
Beauty. So now all of a sudden it's in the second year. Once it's in the second year, what's the deen? It becomes automatically a shelamim. So what did you do? Okay, you brought it on Pesach, meaning on Erev Pesach, bismano, l'shem Pesach. You brought it l'shmo. Lashi, da'avile. Okay, so now you got the case. Basically, we're making a simple case. What's the law? If a person is shochet, shilamim, bismano, l'shem Pesach.
Usually it's pasul.
Right. Normally, Korban Pesach, you have to slaughter it l'shem Pesach. Pesach l'shem Pesach. Here I'm taking a shilamim and I'm slaughtering it bismano l'shem Pesach. What kind of business is that over there? Shochet shilamim l'shem Pesach bismano. That shouldn't be good. So the Gemara says, v'chen hashochet acherim l'shem Pesach bismano. Or for that matter, acherim, other korbanot that I'm shochet bismano l'shem Pesach. Mahloket tanaim here, Rabotai. Rabbi Eliezer posel. Rabbi Yoshua Machshir. Unbelievable. Rabbi Eliezer, I understand. Okay, Rabbi Yoshua is a Hidush. Let's read Rashi. Rabbi Eliezer Posel.
Rabbi Eliezer Posel. Tama mefresh perek Tamad Zebachim. Uma Pesach shemotaro ba shelamim shechato l'shem shelamim bizmano pasul shelamim she'en motaram ba Pesach shechatam l'shem Pesach bizman Pesach en odin shepasul.
The Gemara Zebachim makes a simple logic. Pesach. What's the leftovers of a Korban Pesach? The leftovers of a Korban Pesach, you didn't bring on Pesach. What happens to it? They turn automatically into a Shelamim. Exactly. So the Oma Pesach Shemotara Ba Shelamim means Pesach already has a connection to Shelamim. Pesach is connected to Shelamim because the Motara Pesach becomes what? A Shelamim. And still what? She'ato L'Shem Shelamim Bismano Pasul. And if you slaughtered the Korban Pesach L'Shem Shelamim, it's going to be pasul, even though Pesach is a connection to Shelamim. But if you slaughtered l'shem Shelamim, bismano, it's pasul. Shelamim that have no connection to Pesach. So certainly if you slaughtered a Shilamim L'Shem Pesach Bizmano, it's going to be Pasul. If a person that has a connection to Shilamim, and you slaughtered it Bizmano L'Shem Shilamim, it's not going to be good. Certainly a Shilamim that has no connection to Pesach, that you slaughtered L'Shem Pesach Bizmano, certainly it's not going to be good. That's the Shita of Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Yoshua.
מכשיר, דכל זבחים שנזבחים שלא לשמן, כשארין חוץ מפסח וחטאת.
Oh, so he comes along and says, we have a general rule. Any item that's slaughtered shelo lishma is kasher, except a korban pesach. Now, this is not a korban pesach in this case. This is a shilamim because it's 2 years old. So therefore, basically what you do, you slaughtered a shilamim l'shem pesach. Basically, it's zebachim shenishchatu shelo lishman. Okay. It's the regular rule. It's going to be kasher.
ואם משום דנשחטו לשם פסח, קל וחומר הוא. ומה שלא בזמנו, שאינו כשר לשמו, אחרים כשרים לשמו, בזמנו שהוא כשר לשמו, אינו דין שיכשירו אחרים לשמו, בכל טעם המפרש.
Okay, which is the Gemara in Zebahi. So it comes the Gemara and says, Rabbi Yoshua machshir. Okay, so get the case. The case is you're bringing a korban shelamim b'Pesach, and with the kavanah you're bringing it l'shem Pesach. So therefore, a Pesach she'avdo v'sha'ato b'zmano lishmo. Rabbi Yoshua comes along and says it's going to be kasher, and Rabbi Eliezer says it's going to be pasul. So the Gemara makes the following question: Ta'ama b'zmano. The only wise was going to be pasul de shelamim because you're bringing it bizmano. Ha shelo bizmano kasher. Make a diuk that if you brought the shelamim, this korban shelo bizmano l'shem pesach, it'll be kasher because there's no pesach. The pesach shelo bizmano means nothing. So therefore, it'll be kasher because pesach bizmano can make it a problem, but pesach shelo bizmano it's not pesach. So therefore, that pesach cannot attach to the korban. So therefore, what are you saying? Shalom is kasher. What do you mean? Va'amai, we're asking a question. Nema ho'il. Why don't you say ho'il? According to that rabbi that says ho'il, why don't you say ho'il over here and say what? Ve'nema ho'il u'bizmano posel. Since bizmano, the same case will be pasul. Shalom bizmano nami posel. Which is why don't you say ho'il over here lahmir? Just like you told me we say ho'il lahmir. Why don't you say over here ho'il lahmir as well? Didn't we just say?
We're asking a question on Absista from one of the Tanaim of this Braita?
That's exactly correct. That you, Rav Azda, told me on Amud Rishon, that you hold of Ho'il Lachmir. So, L'chaora, how can you say that Yeshua's Machshir? L'chaora.
Rabbi Eliezer says Posel.
How could you say to be Yeshua's Machshir? Why don't you say Ho'il? And just say that. So Gemara says, Amar Papa, we have a Gezerat Katuv. Really, I hold Ho'il Lahmir, but over here we have a Gezerat Katuv. This week's Parasha. Shariatam da Amar Kira, Va'amartem Zebach Pesach Hu. מה זה זבח פסח הוא? הוא בהווייתו. Which means the Korban Pesach has to be as a Korban Pesach. Lo hu l'shem acherim. I cannot bring the Pesach l'shem acherim, velo acherim l'shmo, and not acherim meaning a shilamim l'shem Pesach. Bizmano shehu pasul l'shum acherim. Bizmano shu pasul, that if a Pesach is brought l'shum acherim, then I'll say acherim pasulim l'shmo. Then acherim, ashelamim will be pasul for Pesach. However, shelo bizmano, which means the question is according to Rabbi Yoshua, according to Rabbi Eliezer as well. According to Rabbi Eliezer that said bizmano is pasul, the implication is bizmano asul shelo bizmano mutar. That's the question. According to, that's what David was trying to correct me. Rabbi Eliezer that says that it's pasul bizmano will hold its kasher shelo bizmano. What do you mean? Why should be kasher? Why don't you say ho'il? If you say ho'il, it should be pasul even shelo bizmano. And the Gemara makes a gezerat katuv that only bizmano is going to be asur, but shelo bizmano will be mutar. Now I'm reading that inside. V'amartem ze ba'pesahu. Hu b'avayato. It's got to be l'shem pesach. Lo hu l'shum achirim. But you cannot bring the pesach for another kavanah. Ve'lo achirim l'shmo. And not others, meaning a shlamim for it. Now, when is that talking? Bizmano. Shehu pasul. Bizmano shu pasul l'shum achirim. Which is, if you bring a pesach l'shum achirim, then we're going to say achirim pesulim l'shmo. Then achirim also, like the shlamim, will be pasul for pesach, like our case. However, shelo bizmano shu kasher l'shum achirim. That a pesach is kasher l'shlamim also zmano achirim kesherim l'shmo. So achirim will be kasher l'shem pesach as well. So therefore, the Gezerat Katuv comes along and says that only bizmano is asur, but shelo bizmano will be mutar, and therefore we min Torah. The Torah is matir, therefore we're not going to say ho'il against a Gezerat Katuv from the Torah. Rav Simlai ata lekamed Rabbi Yohanan. Okay, Rav Simlai came in front of Rabbi Yohanan. Amarle, he told Rabbi Yohanan, nitni li more Sefer Yuhsin. Okay, could you teach me this book called Sefer Yuhsin? It's about the book of lineage. I wanted to learn it. Amarle mehechan at. He told him, where do you come from? Amarle milod. I come from Lod. Vehechan mutbach. And where do you live? Ben Harde'ah. I live in the Harde'ah. Amarle, sorry, I can't teach it to you. En nidunin lo liludin velo linharde'in. The rule is you don't teach Sefer Yuhsin, not to people that originate from Lod or people from the Harde'ah. V'chol sheken de'at milud u'mutbach ben Harde'ah. You got both. You come from Lod and you live in the Harde'ah. Anyway, I can't teach it. Those people do not have good lineage, so therefore you don't teach them this Sefer over here. So Kamil Gemara says, now she says he was just trying to push him away, basically. There's no rule like that. He just didn't want to teach it to him. Gemara says,
but he gets both. Both is the rabbi said. He said two different conditions. One is pushing him away, and one because they were not miyuchasim.
Right, that's why I said both. So the Gemara says, kafya ve'artzeh. Anyway, he pressured him to teach it to him, and he said, okay, fine, I'll teach it to you. Amarle, then he told him, I want you to teach me in 3 months, which is considered a fast time to learn that book. Shakal kala, so Rabbi Yohanan picked up a clog of dirt, patak man threw it at him. Amarle, uma beruria debitud Rabbi Meir, which means, and what? Beruria, she was a Tamida Hakam, she was the wife of Rabbi Meir, Barted, Rabbi Hananya Meteradion, the daughter of Rabbi Hananya Meteradion, Tanya tlat me'a shma'teta biyoma. She learned 300 halachot a day. Megimel me'a ravata, from 300 rabbis. That means she was a Beki'ah. She went all over the Midrash. She studied 300 halachot from 300 in one day. When she learned Sefer Yuhsin, lo yatzta yedei chovata betlat shenim. She wasn't able to finish it in 3 years. Me'at amad betlata yarcheh. And you want to learn it in 3 months? Kishakil ve'azil. On the way out, that was basically saying, go away. So on the way out, Amar le Rabbi, he told Rabbi Yohanan, Ma ben lishmo v'shelo lishmo le'ochlav v'shelo le'ochlav. So he asked him a question legabe Korban Pesach. Read Rashi explains the question. My shina. Is a rule. Let's say you have a double kavanah, a hybrid kavanah. Lishmo v'shelo lishmo. The deen is the korban is pasul. But if you have a kavanah le'ochlav v'shelo le'ochlav, for eaters and non-eaters, it's kasher. So he asked the Rav, what's the difference? Why one case a hybrid is pasul and one case the hybrid is kasher? Amar le, ho'il b'tsulman b'rabbanan at, since you're a tamid hakam, ta be'eman, I'll explain it to you. Lishmo v'shelo lishmo is a more serious psul. Why? Psul begufo. That's the psul in the korban itself. However, le'ochlo v'shelo le'ochlav en pesulo begufo. That's not a psul in the guf of the korban. Doesn't have a blemish. It's psul in who's eating it. So therefore, it's more lenient. Ochlav. The Gemara says, lishmo v'shelo lishmo i'efshar lebarer isuro. Furthermore, when you have a kavanah on an animal, lishmo v'shelo lishmo, you cannot separate the animal. Which part of the animal is lishmo and which part of the animal is shelo lishmo? Which, by the way, that's what it means, begufo. I think this is just explaining what begufo means. Begufo means you cannot separate which limb is lishmo and which limb is shelo lishmo. However, le'ochlav v'shelo le'ochlav, if shal lebaret nesuro. I can say this kezayit is le'ochlav and this kezayit is shelo le'ochlav. In ochlav you can separate it. Lishmo v'shelo lishmo. Furthermore, lishmo v'shelo lishmo yishno b'daled avodot. You remember we learned on yesterday's daf or 2 days ago that shelo lishmo applies to all the 4 avodot. If you have this kavanah in any of the 4 avodot, it'll be pasul. If you have the kavanah of hybrid lishmo in shaita, kabbalat adam, holaka, zedika, in any of the 4 avodot, it's pasul. But if you remember le'ochlav shelo ochlav, eno barba avodot. It's only in shechita. It's not going to be in zedika, for example. So therefore, you see, it's more lenient. Lishmo v'shelo lishmo yeshno b'sibur k'biyachid. Not only that, lishmo v'shelo applies to all types of korbanot, whether it's korban sibur, whether it's korban yachid. Le'ochlav v'shelo le'ochlav eno b'sibur k'biyachid. Right. The law of ochlav shelo only applies to korban pesach. It does not apply to korban sibur. So basically, he was telling him that what? Basically, he was telling him what? That the ochlav shelo is more lenient. That's why if you have a hybrid kavanah shelo ochlav, the ochlav shelo ochlav is room to be lenient. Masechet lishmo v'shelo lishmo, there's more room to be mahmir. Now, Masechet Amar pesulo begufo. This is the Gemara says pesulo begufo v'yefshal lebared isuro hada miltahi. Which means those first 2 reasons are really one reason. Psul begufo is because you cannot identify where it is. The shmo, which part of the animal is the shmo, which part is not the shmo. So in the animal itself, you have an unidentifiable psul. The matam amru pesul. Why is it called pesul? Because the kalah is not begufo. There's nothing wrong with the animal itself. It's a machshava that the guy had. Why are you calling that a pesul begufo? And the answer is mishum the efshal lebared isuro, because you cannot identify it. So therefore, it's considered as if it's a psul in the animal itself. Begufo. Amar Rabbi bar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Miyom shenignaz Sefer Yuchsin, the day that they put this book called Sefer Yuchsin away in Gerizah, Tashash Kohan Shel Hakamim. The Hakamim obviously became weakened, their strength in learning. Vekaha Meor Enehem, and even their sight in understanding Torah became weaker. Look at Ashit Tashash Kohan. There were a lot of secrets in that book, so they lost that koah of revealing these type of secrets. Amar Mozutra ben Atzel leAtzel in Sefer Yuchsin. There's 2 pesukim over there that mention this guy called Atzel. Rashi Shnei Mikraoten.
שני מקראות הן ופרשה גדולה ביניהן, ולעצל 6 בנים, וכחשיב ועזל הבנים, וספר דפרשתה אלה בני עצל.
Right, so basically you have a guy called Atzal. So it says Atzal had 6 kids, and then there's a little couple of more pesukim, tells you the 6 kids. Then it says Ele bnei Atzal. And that little paragraph, from one Atzal to the other Atzal, Ta'inu dalid me'a gamle de derasha. There's 400 camels laden with derashot. Just on that few pesukim over there, to show you how rich this Sefer Yochsin was. But of course, they got...
this pasuk, it seems like it was in Divrei Hayamim. So Sefer Yochsin was commenting on these, had a perush on Divrei Hayamim, that's what we're saying?
Yeah, why does it seem to you that it's in Divrei Hayamim?
Because I'm looking at the Torah or HaShalem.
Very good. So it's definitely in Divrei Hayamim. These pesukim over here are all in Divrei Hayamim, and Sefer Yochsin explains who these people were, and obviously with all the secrets behind it and all the depth. In this little paragraph, which is really just one pasuk actually, Atzel 6 banim ele bnei Atzel. From one Atzel to other Atzel, 400 camels laden with derashot, shows you how. So he wanted to learn it in 3 months. So he told him 3 months. Beruria was a genius of geniuses, couldn't learn it in 3 months. Okay, but the point is, what do you see from the main question that our sugya is dealing with? There's a difference between lishmo v'shelo lishmo and ochlav shelo leochlav. Lishmo v'shelo lishmo has more chumrot, therefore it's going to be pasul when he has that kavanah. Masechet ochlav shelo leochlav, since it has more leniencies, it'll be room to be mekel, and say the korban will be kasher. Ad kan baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen. Amen. Sunday's daf, Rabotai, daf samech.